The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the cramped basement office of the Illinois State Capitol building in Springfield. Amanda Foster, a mid-level auditor for the state comptroller's office, rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at her computer screen. It was nearly 9 p.m. on a Friday night in October, and while most of her colleagues had left hours ago to start their weekends, Amanda remained, transfixed by the numbers on her screen. "This can't be right," she muttered to herself, taking a sip from her long, cold cup of Starbucks coffee. For the past 3 weeks, she had been conducting a routine audit of the state's COVID-19 relief fund distribution, specifically examining the governor's Pandemic Response Initiative, a $400 million program created by Governor Richard Sullivan to provide emergency aid to small businesses throughout Illinois. Amanda had noticed something odd, a pattern of disbursements to businesses that didn't seem to exist beyond paper filings. Further digging revealed these businesses all shared common addresses, board members, or registration agents. What had begun as a minor discrepancy had evolved into what appeared to be a sophisticated network of shell companies, all receiving substantial relief funds. Even more troubling was where the money went after it reached these companies. Amanda had traced several payments flowing back to entities connected to major donors of Sullivan's last campaign. The implication was staggering. Governor Sullivan, the charismatic Democrat who had swept into office 2 years ago on promises of transparency and integrity, appeared to be using the Pandemic Relief Fund to reward his donors through an elaborate kickback scheme. Amanda leaned back in her chair, the weight of her discovery settling on her shoulders. As a career civil servant who had worked under 3 different administrations, she prided herself on her political neutrality. But this wasn't about politics. This was about hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars being diverted from struggling small businesses during a crisis. Her desk phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. The caller ID showed it was her supervisor, Robert Chen. "Amanda, you're still there?" Robert sounded surprised. "I just got an alert that someone was accessing the GPRI audit files after hours." "Yeah, sorry about that," Amanda replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I noticed some irregularities I wanted to check before the weekend. Rob, I think we have a problem. A big one." There was a pause on the line. "How big?" "Governor's office big. Potential criminal charges big," Amanda said quietly, despite being alone in the office. "I need to show you what I found." "Not over the phone." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay. Meet me at Muldaner's in 30 minutes, not here. And Amanda, don't email anything. Don't save anything to the shared drive." The line went dead. Amanda stared at the phone for a moment, then quickly began downloading key files onto an encrypted USB drive. Robert's caution was warranted. If what she suspected was true, this information was explosive and potentially dangerous in the wrong hands. Muldaner's restaurant, one of Springfield's oldest establishments, was nearly empty by the time Amanda arrived. Robert was already seated in a corner booth, nursing a glass of bourbon. At 58, with salt and pepper hair and perpetually rumpled suits, Robert had the weary look of someone who had spent too many decades in government service. "I ordered you a gin and tonic," he said, as Amanda slid into the booth. "I figured you might need it." "Thanks." "Nisi," Amanda glanced around the restaurant, noting the few remaining patrons were engrossed in their own conversations. She pulled out her laptop and the USB drive. "Rob, look at this." For the next 20 minutes, Amanda walked her supervisor through her findings. The pattern of relief funds directed to dubious businesses, the connections to the governor's campaign donors, and the circular flow of money that ultimately benefited those close to Sullivan's political operation. "Jesus Christ," Robert muttered, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Are you absolutely certain about this? The implications—" "I've triple-checked everything," Amanda replied. "The data trail is clear once you know what to look for. We're talking about at least $75 million that I can definitively trace, possibly much more." Robert took a long sip of his bourbon. Sullivan has been positioning himself for a Senate run next year. Hell, there's been talk about presidential ambitions for 2028. This would end all of that, and that's assuming he avoids prison. This isn't about his political future, Rob. This is about corruption and fraud on a massive scale. Real businesses, businesses that actually exist and employ real people, were denied relief funds, while this network of fake companies funneled money back to Sullivan's donors. I know. Robert raised his hands defensively. I'm just thinking through the implications. This is going to be a political earthquake, Amanda. The fallout will be enormous. He paused, studying her face. And I need to make sure you understand what you're getting into. Once this becomes public, your life will never be the same. Amanda felt a chill despite the warmth of the restaurant. She hadn't fully considered the personal consequences of her discovery. What's the alternative? Ignore it? Pretend I didn't see it? No, Robert sighed. You know we can't do that, but we need to be strategic about how we proceed. Who we tell, when we tell them, how we document everything. Your career, and possibly your safety, depends on it. My safety? Amanda's voice rose slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. You think this could actually be dangerous? Robert leaned forward. I've been in state government for 30 years, Amanda. I've seen what happens to whistleblowers, especially ones who threaten powerful people. I'm not saying anyone would harm you physically, but your reputation, your career, your personal life, all of it could come under attack. Amanda felt the weight of her discovery growing heavier. What had begun as an anomaly in a spreadsheet was rapidly evolving into something that could upend the state's political landscape and her own life in the process. So what do we do? She asked. First, we need legal protection, Robert replied. Tomorrow morning we take this to Sarah Thompson in the Inspector General's office. She's straight as an arrow and doesn't owe anyone political favors. From there, we'll likely need to involve the FBI, since we're talking about federal relief funds. Amanda nodded, trying to ignore the knot forming in her stomach. And tonight you go home. You don't talk to anyone about this, and you certainly don't write anything down or send any emails. Robert drained the last of his bourbon. And Amanda, check your rearview mirror on the drive home, just to be safe. The following morning dawned grey and drizzly, matching Amanda's mood as she drove to the nondescript building that housed the office of the Inspector General. She had barely slept, her mind racing with the implications of what she had discovered and the warnings Robert had given her. Sarah Thompson, the State Inspector General, was a tall, imposing woman with a reputation for fierce independence. Appointed by Sullivan's Republican predecessor and retained by Sullivan in a show of bipartisanship, Thompson had built her career on rooting out government waste and corruption, regardless of which party was responsible. Ms. Foster, Mr. Chen, Thompson greeted them in her sparse office. This must be serious for you both to request an urgent Saturday meeting. It is, Robert confirmed. Amanda has uncovered what appears to be a significant fraud scheme involving the governor's pandemic response initiative. Thompson's expression remained neutral, but her posture stiffened slightly. I see. Show me what you found. Once again, Amanda walked through her evidence, this time with even more detailed documentation. Thompson listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. If this is accurate, Thompson said when Amanda finished, we're looking at one of the most significant public corruption cases in Illinois history, and that's saying something for a state with our track record. It's accurate, Amanda assured her. I verified every connection, cross-referenced every transaction. Thompson nodded slowly. This will require federal involvement. The funds in question came from federal COVID relief packages, which puts this squarely in FBI jurisdiction. She paused, studying both Amanda and Robert. Are you both prepared for what comes next? This won't be a quiet internal investigation. Once the FBI is involved, there's no controlling where it goes or who finds out. Amanda exchanged a glance with Robert before replying. I understand, but I can't unsee what I've found, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't report it. Good. Thompson said with a grim smile. Because I've already made some calls. There's an FBI agent who specializes in public corruption cases, waiting in the conference room down the hall. His name is Special Agent Daniel Ramirez. You knew why we were coming? Robert asked, surprised. Let's just say I had my suspicions about certain aspects of the relief fund distribution, Thompson replied. We've been getting anonymous tips for months, but nothing concrete enough to act on. Ms. Foster's audit may have provided the missing piece. Indeed, the meeting with FBI Special Agent Ramirez lasted over 4 hours, during which Amanda painstakingly walked him through her findings. Ramirez, a serious man with a methodical approach, asked detailed questions and took copious notes. This is excellent work, Ms. Foster, he said, as their meeting concluded. We'll need to move quickly now. I'll be assembling a team and we'll likely execute search warrants within the next 48-72 hours. Until then, absolute discretion is critical. What about Amanda's protection? Robert asked. Once this breaks open, she'll be identified as the whistleblower. Ramirez nodded. We'll take appropriate measures to ensure Ms. Foster's safety. For now, continue your normal routines. Go to work, act as if nothing has changed. But be vigilant and contact me immediately if you notice anything unusual. As Amanda left the Inspector General's office that afternoon, a fine mist had settled over Springfield, shrouding the Capitol dome in the distance. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life had irrevocably changed, that she had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. What she didn't know was just how quickly events would unfold, or how far the corruption extended beyond what she had already uncovered. Monday morning arrived with a sense of surreal normalcy. Amanda went to her office as instructed, trying to maintain her regular routine despite the knowledge that FBI agents were preparing to raid government offices and private businesses across Illinois. By noon, the first signs that something extraordinary was happening began to emerge. Colleagues whispered about FBI agents seen entering the Thompson Center in Chicago, where the governor's primary office was located. By 2 p.m., news alerts were buzzing on phones throughout the comptroller's office. Breaking: FBI conducting raids at multiple Illinois government offices. Amanda kept her head down, focusing on her computer screen and trying to ignore the growing commotion around her. Robert had messaged her earlier, "Stay calm, say nothing, leave at normal time." At 4:30 p.m., just as Amanda was preparing to leave for the day, her phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown. "Amanda Foster?" a female voice asked when she answered. "Yes, this is Amanda. This is Special Agent Lauren Wilson with the FBI. We need you to come to the federal building immediately. A car is waiting for you in the south parking garage, level B, near the elevator." "What's happened?" Amanda asked, her heart racing. "We'll brief you when you arrive. Please come now and tell no one where you're going." The federal building in downtown Springfield was a hive of activity when Amanda arrived. She was quickly ushered into a conference room where Agent Ramirez was waiting along with several other agents and what appeared to be federal prosecutors. "Ms. Foster, thank you for coming," Ramirez greeted her. "We've moved faster than anticipated because certain individuals became aware of our investigation and began destroying evidence." "How?" Amanda asked, stunned. "Who knew?" "We're still determining that," Ramirez replied grimly. "But we've already seized multiple devices with file deletion software actively running. Fortunately, we've secured enough evidence to proceed with initial charges." One of the prosecutors, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, stepped forward. "Ms. Foster, I'm Elizabeth Carter, U.S. Attorney for the Central District of Illinois. Your audit findings have helped us uncover what appears to be a massive corruption scheme. Governor Sullivan and several members of his administration will be indicted tomorrow on multiple federal charges, including wire fraud, bribery, and misappropriation of federal funds." Amanda felt the room spin slightly. "Tomorrow? That's incredibly fast." "We had no choice," Carter explained. "Once we confirmed the scheme's existence, we learned that attempts were already underway to cover it up. The governor was planning to leave the country tomorrow night for a trade mission to Singapore. A one-way trade mission, apparently, Agent Ramirez added. We found evidence he had begun moving significant assets offshore. Carter continued. What we didn't anticipate was how many people were involved. This goes far beyond Sullivan and a few aides. We've identified at least 23 individuals directly implicated in the scheme, including 3 state legislators, several prominent business leaders, and even 2 officials in the state comptroller's office. The comptroller's office? Amanda's voice rose in alarm. Who? Ramirez and Carter exchanged glances. I'm afraid we can't disclose that yet, Carter said. But it's precisely why we've brought you here. We have reason to believe your safety may be compromised. Several of the subjects under investigation accessed audit logs showing your activities last week. The implication hit Amanda like a physical blow. People in her own office, people she worked with every day, were involved in the corruption she had uncovered, and they knew she was the one who had discovered it. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You'll be placed in protective custody tonight, Ramirez explained. Tomorrow, once the indictments are announced, we'll reassess the threat level. You may need to enter the witness protection program temporarily, but we hope that won't be necessary. Witness protection? Amanda repeated incredulously. I can't just disappear. I have a life here, a career. Ms. Foster, Carter interrupted gently but firmly. I understand this is overwhelming. But you've exposed a corruption scheme involving hundreds of millions of dollars and some of the most powerful people in Illinois, people who now know exactly who you are and what you've done. We have evidence that at least one individual involved has connections to organized crime in Chicago. Your safety must be our priority. The reality of her situation suddenly crashed down on Amanda. What had begun as anomalies in a spreadsheet had cascaded into something far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Can I at least call my sister? Let her know I'm okay. Once you're at the secure location, Ramirez assured her, but the call will need to be monitored, and you cannot disclose your whereabouts or any details of the investigation. As Amanda was escorted from the federal building through a rear service entrance to an unmarked SUV with tinted windows, the full weight of her actions settled upon her. Her life as she knew it was over, at least for now. The quiet career in government finance she had built over the past decade had suddenly thrust her into the center of what would likely become one of the biggest political scandals in Illinois history. The SUV pulled away from the curb, merging into the evening traffic of downtown Springfield. In the distance, the illuminated dome of the Capitol building stood as a reminder of the ideals of government that Amanda had always believed in, ideals that had been betrayed by the very people elected to uphold them. As the car accelerated onto the highway, heading to an undisclosed location, Amanda wondered if exposing the truth had been worth the cost. But deep down, she already knew the answer. Some truths demanded to be revealed, no matter the personal sacrifice. What she didn't yet realize was that the full scope of the corruption she had uncovered was far greater than even the FBI currently suspected, and that the most dangerous revelations were yet to come. If this story seems familiar, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Tuesday morning dawned with a media firestorm unlike anything Illinois had seen in decades. The news of Governor Richard Sullivan's imminent indictment on federal corruption charges led every broadcast, newspaper, and news website across the state and nation. Governor Sullivan to be indicted. FBI alleges massive fraud scheme, screamed the headline of the Chicago Tribune. Pandemic relief funds diverted to political donors, declared the Sun-Times. Corruption in the Capitol. Governor Sullivan and 23 others face federal charges, announced the Springfield State Journal Register. From a hotel room in an undisclosed location, Amanda Foster watched the coverage unfold on CNN, a surreal experience as reporters breathlessly recounted the scandal she had helped uncover. Sources tell CNN that the investigation began with a routine audit that raised red flags about the distribution of pandemic relief funds, the anchor reported. The identity of the auditor who first discovered the irregularities remains confidential, but federal officials credit this individual with exposing what U.S. Attorney Elizabeth Carter has called one of the most brazen abuses of public trust in Illinois history. Amanda's phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Ramirez. Press conference at 10 a.m. Sullivan being taken into custody now. Stay in room. Agent Wilson will update you after the announcements. She set down her phone and continued watching the coverage, feeling strangely detached from the chaos she had initiated. The reporters were filling airtime with speculation and background on Sullivan's political career. His rise from state senator to lieutenant governor to governor, his carefully cultivated image as a reformer determined to break Illinois' cycle of corruption, and his widely rumored ambitions for higher office. What struck Amanda most was how completely Sullivan had fooled everyone, herself included. She had voted for him in the last election, impressed by his articulate vision for the state and his seemingly genuine commitment to ethics in government. At precisely 10 a.m., the coverage switched to the federal building in Chicago, where U.S. Attorney Elizabeth Carter stood at a podium flanked by FBI officials. This morning, a federal grand jury returned indictments against Governor Richard Sullivan and 23 other individuals on charges including wire fraud, mail fraud, bribery, money laundering, and misappropriation of federal funds, Carter announced, her voice steady and authoritative. The indictments allege that Governor Sullivan, in conjunction with members of his administration and private citizens, orchestrated a scheme to divert COVID-19 relief funds intended for struggling small businesses to a network of shell companies. These funds were then funneled back to political donors and associates of the governor in what amounted to a sophisticated kickback operation. Carter continued, the investigation has determined that approximately $94 million in federal relief funds were misappropriated through this scheme. This morning, FBI agents executed arrest warrants for all 24 indicted individuals. I can confirm that Governor Sullivan is currently in federal custody. Amanda felt a wave of vindication mixed with disbelief. Just 4 days ago, she had been staring at spreadsheets, troubled by discrepancies, but not yet comprehending the full scope of what she had discovered. Now, the governor of Illinois was in handcuffs. The press conference continued with Carter outlining the charges and potential sentences, which ranged up to 30 years for some of the most serious offenses, before taking questions from reporters. Can you identify the whistleblower who first uncovered this scheme? One reporter asked. We are not disclosing that information at this time, Carter replied firmly. The individual's safety and privacy are paramount concerns. Has Lieutenant Governor Melissa Chen been implicated in any way? Another reporter called out. The investigation has not uncovered evidence suggesting Lieutenant Governor Chen was aware of or involved in this scheme, Carter answered. Under the Illinois Constitution, she will assume the duties of governor effective immediately. As the press conference concluded, Amanda's phone rang. It was Agent Wilson. We're moving you to a different location, Wilson said without preamble. Pack your things. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Why? What's happened? Amanda asked, suddenly alarmed. Just a precaution, Wilson assured her, though her tone suggested otherwise. We've received some concerning intelligence that necessitates relocating you. What kind of concerning intelligence? Wilson hesitated before responding. 2 of the indicted individuals haven't been located yet. One is Gregory Mercer, the governor's deputy chief of staff. The other is Alan Ridley, assistant director of the state comptroller's office. Amanda felt her blood run cold. Alan Ridley, Her department head, the man who had personally commended her work on numerous occasions and had an office just down the hall from hers. "Ridley's involved?" she asked, though it came out as more of a statement than a question. "Deeply involved," Wilson confirmed, "and he apparently accessed your audit logs multiple times late last week. He knows you discovered the scheme, Ms. Foster, and given his current status as a fugitive, we need to assume he presents a potential threat." "I've worked with Alan for 5 years, Amanda said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He came to my birthday party last year. How could he be part of this?" "We'll brief you more at the new location," Wilson said, her tone softening slightly. "For now, just be ready to move quickly. And Miss Foster, don't contact anyone, not even family, until we've reached the secure site." 20 minutes later, Amanda was escorted from the hotel through a service entrance to a waiting black SUV with federal plates. As they pulled away, she noticed another SUV following close behind. Additional security, she presumed. Their destination turned out to be a remote federal facility about 2 hours outside of Springfield. Set back from the main road and surrounded by dense woods, the compound had the look of a small office park, though the multiple security checkpoints and armed personnel suggested its actual purpose. Agent Ramirez was waiting for her in a conference room inside the main building. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his normally immaculate appearance now rumpled and his eyes bloodshot. "Ms. Foster, thank you for your cooperation," he greeted her. "I apologize for the additional disruption, but we needed to move you to a more secure facility." "Because of Alan Ridley," Amanda stated flatly. "Yes, partially." Ramirez gestured for her to take a seat. "What I'm about to share with you goes beyond the information released to the public today. You're entitled to know, given your role in exposing this scheme and the potential risks you face." Amanda sat down, bracing herself for whatever revelations were coming. "The corruption you uncovered is more extensive than we initially believed," Ramirez began. "As we've executed search warrants and begun analyzing seized materials, we've discovered that the pandemic relief fund fraud was just one component of a much larger criminal enterprise operating within the Sullivan administration." He pushed a folder across the table to Amanda. Inside were photographs of several men she didn't recognize, along with one she did, Alan Ridley, her colleague from the comptroller's office. "Alan Ridley isn't just a corrupt bureaucrat," Ramirez explained. "Based on evidence we've uncovered, he appears to be the financial architect behind several criminal operations connected to the administration. Before joining state government, Ridley worked for several years as an accountant for the Moretti crime family in Chicago." "A mob accountant?" Amanda couldn't keep the shock from her voice. "Working in the comptroller's office. His background was apparently scrubbed before he was hired during the previous administration," Ramirez continued. "We believe he was deliberately placed there to facilitate various financial schemes. The pandemic relief fraud was simply the latest and most ambitious operation." Amanda struggled to process this information. Alan Ridley, the soft-spoken, seemingly mild-mannered financial administrator who had mentored her, was connected to organized crime. "There's more," Ramirez said grimly. "We believe Ridley may have been tipped off about our investigation hours before we executed the search warrants. He cleared out his apartment and office, and we haven't been able to locate him. Given his connections and the significant criminal exposure he faces, we have to consider him both a flight risk and a potential threat to witnesses." "Including me," Amanda concluded. "Yes, which is why we've moved you here and assigned a security detail." Ramirez leaned forward, his expression grave. "Ms. Foster, I want to be completely transparent with you. Until Ridley is apprehended, we cannot guarantee your absolute safety if you return to your normal life." "Oof, so what are my options?" Amanda asked, feeling a creeping sense of dread. "For the immediate future, you'll remain here under federal protection. Once we've apprehended all the fugitives and the immediate threat has diminished, We can discuss longer-term arrangements. The U.S. Marshal Service has expressed that you would qualify for the witness security program if you choose that route. Witness protection, Amanda said flatly. A new identity, relocation, leaving everything and everyone behind. It would be temporary, Ramirez assured her, though his tone lacked conviction. Once the trials are completed, which could take years, Amanda interrupted. I've seen how these high-profile corruption cases play out, Agent Ramirez. The legal proceedings can drag on for half a decade or more. Ramirez didn't dispute her assessment. There is another option, though it comes with its own risks. You could go public as the whistleblower. Your identity will eventually become known through the legal proceedings anyway, and controlling the narrative might offer a different kind of protection. Public visibility can sometimes deter those who would prefer to operate in the shadows. Amanda considered this alternative. Go public, as in press conferences and interviews? Essentially, yes. The media interest in this case is enormous. You would have platforms eager to tell your story. And once your identity is publicly known, any harm that came to you would immediately raise suspicions about those involved in the scandal. It was a calculus that Amanda had never imagined having to make. Invisibility versus visibility, both with potentially life-altering consequences. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course. Ramirez stood, indicating their meeting was concluding. You'll be safe here while you consider your options. Agent Wilson will be your primary contact, and I'll return tomorrow for your decision. As Ramirez left, Amanda remained seated, staring at the folder containing Alan Ridley's photograph. The man she had worked alongside for years, shared lunch breaks with, collaborated on projects with, was now a fugitive with ties to organized crime who might wish her harm. The reality of her situation hit her with renewed force. There was no going back to her old life. Whatever path she chose moving forward would be fundamentally different from the quiet, orderly existence she had built for herself. That evening, alone in her assigned quarters at the federal facility, Amanda watched the continuing coverage of the Sullivan scandal on television. The story had now expanded to include the organized crime connections, with reporters speculating about the full extent of the corruption. A breaking news alert caught her attention. Fugitive Deputy Chief of Staff Gregory Mercer apprehended at Canadian border. The news brought a small measure of relief. One down, one to go. But Alan Ridley, the man who represented the most direct threat to her, remained at large. As she turned off the television and prepared for bed, Amanda came to a decision. She would not hide. She would not allow fear to force her into abandoning the life she had built. Tomorrow, she would tell Agent Ramirez that she wanted to go public with her story, to stand in the light rather than retreat into shadows. What she couldn't know was that Alan Ridley was already much closer than the FBI realized, and that her decision would set in motion a chain of events that would expose corruption, extending far beyond Illinois state government. 2 days after Amanda Foster made the decision to go public as the whistleblower who exposed Governor Sullivan's corruption scheme, she sat in a hotel suite in downtown Chicago, preparing for her first television interview. CNN had won the competitive bidding for her exclusive story, promising a primetime special that would be simulcast on their cable network and streaming platform. "We're about 20 minutes from going live," the producer informed her. "The makeup artist will be in shortly for final touches." Amanda nodded, trying to calm her nerves. After extensive discussions with the FBI and federal prosecutors, a carefully orchestrated plan had been developed for her public debut. She would reveal her identity and share the basic facts of how she discovered the fraud scheme, while avoiding details that might compromise the ongoing investigation or future prosecution. In return for her cooperation with this approach, the FBI had agreed to provide enhanced security and to expedite the search for Alan Ridley, the fugitive former assistant director of the comptroller's office, who remained at large. A gentle knock at the door signaled the arrival of the makeup artist, who quickly set about making final adjustments to Amanda's appearance. As she worked, the makeup artist chatted amiably about the unseasonably cool weather and the traffic in downtown Chicago. Normal, everyday conversations that felt surreal given the circumstances. "You look great," the woman assured Amanda as she finished. "Very professional but approachable. The camera will love you." Amanda managed a weak smile, though looking great was the least of her concerns. Since making the decision to go public, she had been moved from the secure federal facility to this hotel, under heavy guard. 4 FBI agents were currently stationed in the suite sitting room, and another team was monitoring the hotel's entrances and exits. Agent Lauren Wilson entered the bedroom where Amanda was preparing. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her expression conveying genuine concern. "As well as can be expected," Amanda replied. "Though I keep wondering if I've made the right decision. Being in witness protection is looking more appealing by the hour." Wilson offered a reassuring smile. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Hiding would mean letting them win in a way, forcing you to abandon your life because you did the right thing. That's what I keep telling myself." Amanda stood and smoothed the front of her blue blazer, chosen specifically because it conveyed authority and trustworthiness, according to the media consultant the FBI had arranged for her. "How secure is this setup?" "Very," Wilson assured her. "The hotel management is cooperating fully. The interview location is known only to essential personnel, and we have agents monitoring all approaches." She hesitated slightly before adding, "We've also received some promising intelligence on Ridley's whereabouts. There was a confirmed sighting in Detroit yesterday. We think he may be attempting to cross into Canada, like Mercer tried to do." This news provided Amanda with a small measure of comfort as she was escorted to the hotel suite that had been converted into a makeshift television studio. The CNN anchor, Melissa Chen, greeted her warmly. "Ms. Foster, thank you for your courage in coming forward," Chen said as they were both fitted with microphones. "We'll start with some basic questions about your background and position, then move into how you discovered the discrepancies, and finally discuss the aftermath and your decision to go public. Does that sound all right?" Amanda nodded, grateful for the clear roadmap. "Yes, that works. We're live in 5 minutes," a producer announced. "Places, everyone." As the final preparations were made, Amanda took a deep breath and centered herself. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. Her identity as the whistleblower who brought down a governor would be known to the world in a matter of minutes. 3, 2, 1. The floor director counted down silently with his fingers and then pointed at Melissa Chen. "Good evening. I'm Melissa Chen, and this is a CNN special report. The audit that brought down a governor. Tonight, we have an exclusive interview with Amanda Foster, the state auditor whose routine financial review uncovered what federal prosecutors are calling one of the most significant public corruption schemes in Illinois history." The camera switched to a 2-shot showing both Chen and Amanda. "Amanda Foster, thank you for joining us tonight. You've been at the center of a political earthquake that has shaken Illinois government to its core. Before we discuss the details of your discovery, tell us a bit about yourself and your role in state government." Amanda had rehearsed this answer extensively. "I've been an auditor with the Illinois State Comptroller's Office for nearly 10 years. My job involves reviewing state financial transactions to ensure compliance with laws and regulations. It's detailed work that most people would probably find quite boring, until it isn't." Chen smiled at the understated humor. "And that's exactly what happened in this case. What began as a routine audit turned into something far more significant. Take us through how this started." For the next 45 minutes, Amanda walked viewers through her discovery. The initial red flags in the pandemic relief fund distributions, the pattern of payments to questionable businesses, and the connections she eventually uncovered to Governor Sullivan's campaign donors. When did you realize that what you were seeing wasn't just administrative errors or sloppy record-keeping, but actual corruption? Chen asked. There was a moment when I traced a series of payments that formed a clear, circular pattern, Amanda explained. Money went from the relief fund to these shell companies, then to various contractors, and ultimately back to entities connected to major donors. The precision of it was striking. This wasn't accidental or coincidental. It was methodical, designed specifically to hide the flow of funds. And what did you do when you made this realization? I took my findings to my supervisor, who immediately recognized the seriousness of what I'd discovered. Within 24 hours, we were meeting with the State Inspector General, and shortly after that, the FBI became involved. Chen nodded, maintaining a serious expression. The indictment suggests this scheme diverted approximately $94 million in federal relief funds. In your professional estimation, how much money might have continued to be misappropriated if you hadn't discovered the pattern? The program was allocated $400 million in total, with about half already disbursed when I began my audit. Based on the patterns I identified, it's reasonable to assume the scheme would have continued throughout the entire fund distribution if it hadn't been detected. Potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, Chen clarified, making sure viewers grasped the magnitude. Yes, Amanda confirmed simply. You've made the decision to come forward publicly rather than remain anonymous. That's a significant choice, especially given that one of the individuals indicted in this case, Alan Ridley, your former colleague, remains at large and is reportedly connected to organized crime. Can you talk about why you chose to go public? This was the question Amanda had struggled with most during her preparation. I believe in transparency and accountability, she began carefully. Those aren't just abstract concepts. They're principles that should guide how our government operates. I uncovered this scheme because I was doing my job, following those principles. Hiding now would feel like abandoning those same values. Chen nodded appreciatively. Have you received threats since your involvement became known within government circles? I can't comment specifically on security matters, Amanda replied, following the guidance she'd received from the FBI. But I'm taking appropriate precautions. What would you say to other government employees who might observe irregularities or potential wrongdoing but are afraid to speak up? Amanda considered the question thoughtfully. I would tell them that the temporary discomfort of asking difficult questions is nothing compared to the lasting damage of looking the other way. Our government functions on public trust. When we see that trust being violated, remaining silent makes us complicit. The interview continued with discussions about the broader implications of the scandal, the upcoming special election to replace Sullivan, and the reforms being proposed to prevent similar schemes in the future. Throughout, Amanda maintained her composure, speaking with the quiet authority of someone who understood the gravity of the situation but was confident in her actions. As the interview concluded, Chen addressed the camera. Amanda Foster's courage in coming forward has not only exposed a massive fraud scheme, but also reminded us of the critical importance of oversight and accountability in government. While Governor Sullivan and his co-conspirators await trial, the people of Illinois owe a debt of gratitude to this civil servant who simply did her job and, in the process, protected tens of millions of taxpayer dollars. For CNN, I'm Melissa Chen. Good night. Once the cameras stopped rolling, Chen turned to Amanda. That was excellent. Thank you for your candor. Amanda managed a small smile. Thank you for being respectful with your questions. I know sensationalism drives ratings, but I appreciated your focus on the facts. Some stories don't need sensationalism, Chen replied. This one certainly doesn't. She gathered her notes and stood. Be safe, Miss Foster. What you've done matters. As the CNN crew packed up their equipment, Agent Wilson approached Amanda. You did well, she said. Very composed and articulate. The U.S. Attorney's Office is pleased with how you handled the questions about the ongoing investigation. What happens now?" Amanda asked, suddenly feeling drained from the tension of the interview. "We'll monitor the initial public reaction, but the security plan remains in place. You'll stay at a different hotel tonight. We've already moved your things, and tomorrow we'll reassess based on any developments." Amanda nodded, too tired to question the arrangements. The reality of her new public identity was just beginning to sink in. By morning, her face would be known to millions of Americans. She would be recognized on the street, approached by strangers, possibly targeted by those connected to the scandal. The thought was overwhelming. "One day at a time," Wilson said, as if reading her thoughts. "That's how you get through this. Just one day at a time." The following morning, Amanda awoke in her new hotel room to the sound of her temporary phone buzzing with notifications. Her interview had aired the previous night, and the response had been immediate and overwhelming. Agent Wilson arrived with breakfast and a summary of the public reaction. "You've become something of a folk hero overnight," she informed Amanda. "Social media is flooded with supportive messages, political leaders from both parties are praising your courage, and the hashtag #BeAnAmanda is trending nationally." "BeAnAmanda?" Amanda repeated incredulously. "It's become shorthand for doing the right thing regardless of personal risk," Wilson explained, sliding a tablet across the table to show her the trending topic. "Your story has resonated far beyond Illinois. People are hungry for examples of integrity in public service." Amanda scrolled through the social media posts with a mixture of amazement and discomfort. Being held up as a symbol of moral courage felt strange and undeserved. From her perspective, she had simply been doing her job. "There's something else," Wilson continued, her tone shifting to one of greater seriousness. "The FBI received a credible tip regarding Alan Ridley early this morning. He was reportedly seen at a motel just outside of Indianapolis." Amanda looked up sharply. "Indianapolis? That's less than 4 hours from Chicago." "Yes, which is concerning given the timing. It suggests he may have abandoned any plans to flee to Canada and could be moving toward Chicago instead." Wilson's expression was carefully neutral, but her implications were clear. Ridley might be coming after Amanda. "What does this mean for me?" Amanda asked, setting aside the tablet. "We're accelerating the security plan. A team from the U.S. Marshals Service will be taking over your protection detail this afternoon. They have more experience with witness security in high-profile cases." The transition to Marshal Service protection meant another move to yet another location, more security protocols, and further restrictions on Amanda's movements and communications. With each passing hour, her life became less her own and more a carefully managed security operation. By evening, she was settled into a safe house in the Chicago suburbs, a nondescript single-family home in a quiet neighborhood, now staffed with marshals posing as relatives and private security contractors monitoring the perimeter. Deputy Marshal Rachel Connors, the lead on Amanda's security detail, provided a briefing on the new arrangements. "This location is known only to essential personnel. We've established cover identities for everyone staying here, and the property is registered to a shell company with no connections to law enforcement." "How long will I need to stay here?" Amanda asked. "That depends on several factors," Connors replied diplomatically. "The most immediate concern is apprehending Ridley. Once he's in custody, the threat assessment will change significantly." "And if he isn't apprehended soon?" Connors hesitated before answering. "Then we would need to discuss longer-term protective arrangements, possibly including relocation." The euphemism was clear. Witness protection was still very much on the table. Later that evening, as Amanda attempted to distract herself with a novel from the safe house's small library, her temporary phone rang. It was Agent Ramirez. "Miss Foster, I wanted to update you personally on some significant developments," he began without preamble. "First, your interview has generated numerous tips regarding the investigation, including some that have opened new avenues we hadn't previously explored." "That's good news," Amanda replied. "What about Ridley?" That's the second development. We've confirmed that the Indianapolis sighting was legitimate. Ridley stayed at the Lakeside Motel for approximately 6 hours yesterday before departing in a vehicle with Illinois plates. We're working to track his movements, but there's something else you should know. Ramirez paused, and Amanda could sense he was carefully choosing his words. Go on, she prompted. We've been analyzing materials seized from Ridley's office and home. Among them, we found several encrypted files that our technical team has managed to partially decode. They contain what appears to be a comprehensive accounting of the corruption scheme, far more detailed than what your audit uncovered. That makes sense, Amanda said. As the financial architect, he would have maintained records of the entire operation. Yes, but the records go well beyond the pandemic relief fraud. They document what appears to be at least a decade of systematic corruption involving multiple administrations, both Democratic and Republican. Ramirez's voice had dropped to an almost conspiratorial tone. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in misappropriated funds, bribes, kickbacks, and money laundering operations dating back to at least 2012. Amanda felt a chill run through her. So this isn't just about Sullivan? No. Sullivan's scheme was just the latest, and perhaps the most brazen, in a long-running criminal enterprise embedded within the Illinois state government. Ridley appears to have been the common thread, the financial facilitator who served whoever was in power. The implications were staggering. What she had uncovered wasn't an isolated incident of corruption by one administration, but the tip of an iceberg that extended across party lines and multiple governorships. There's more, Ramirez continued. The encrypted files include a list of names, individuals who appear to have been involved in or benefited from various components of the scheme. Many are already indicted, but others aren't. Some are quite prominent, including a federal judge, 2 congressmen, and several major business leaders. My God! Amanda whispered. How deep does this go? We're still determining that. But it explains why Ridley might consider you a significant threat. Your audit didn't just expose Sullivan, it potentially unraveled a corrupt system that has operated for years. The conversation left Amanda deeply unsettled. What had begun as a routine audit had now exposed what appeared to be a vast, entrenched network of corruption that spanned political parties and permeated multiple levels of government. And somewhere out there was Alan Ridley, the man who knew all the details and connections and who likely viewed her as the person responsible for bringing it all crashing down. For the next 3 days, Amanda remained at the safe house, receiving regular updates on the investigation and the continuing manhunt for Ridley. The story had expanded in the media as leaks about the broader corruption network began to emerge. Political analysts were calling it potentially the largest public corruption scandal in modern American history, with implications that extended far beyond Illinois. On the 4th morning, Deputy Marshal Connors received a call that visibly alarmed her. After a brief, tense conversation, she approached Amanda in the safe house's kitchen. "We need to move immediately," Connors said, her professional demeanor betraying a hint of urgency. "Pack only essentials. We leave in 10 minutes. "What's happened?" Amanda asked, setting down her coffee cup. "We've received intelligence suggesting this location may have been compromised. It's likely just an abundance of caution, but we're not taking any chances." Amanda had learned enough about security protocols to know that this kind of sudden relocation indicated a serious concern. She quickly gathered her few belongings and was ready when Connors returned. "We'll be taking different vehicles to the new location," Connors explained as they exited through the garage. "You'll be with me in the lead car. The team will follow in 2 separate vehicles to ensure we're not being tracked." As they pulled out of the garage and onto the quiet suburban street, Amanda noticed Connors checking her mirrors frequently, another sign that the threat was considered real, not just theoretical. "Can you tell me what specifically triggered this move?" Amanda asked after several minutes of silence. Connors kept her eyes on the road, but her grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. A surveillance camera at a gas station 2 miles from here captured images of a man matching Ridley's description early this morning. The timing suggests he may have been conducting reconnaissance of the area. He found me, Amanda said, the reality settling in her stomach like a stone. We don't know that for certain, Connors countered, but we're proceeding under the assumption that the safe house location was compromised somehow. They continued driving in tense silence, merging onto the highway heading south out of Chicago. About 20 minutes into the journey, Connor's radio crackled with a transmission from one of the follow vehicles. "Possible tail identified," a male voice reported. "Dark blue sedan, 2 occupants, maintained consistent distance since we left the expressway." "Acknowledged," Connors responded. "Implement countermeasures. We'll proceed to alternate location Alpha." She changed lanes abruptly, then took the next exit, navigating a series of turns designed to confirm whether they were indeed being followed. "Are we in danger?" Amanda asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're taking appropriate precautions," Connors replied, which wasn't quite an answer. "The team will handle any pursuit. Our priority is getting you to the secure location." Oh, the alternate location Alpha turned out to be a small airfield outside of Joliet, where a helicopter was waiting. As they approached, Connors received another radio transmission. "Tail confirmed and neutralized. State police have the vehicle stopped, occupants being detained." Connors visibly relaxed. "Good work. Proceed to secondary rendezvous point. We're approaching the airfield now." "Neutralized?" Amanda asked. "What does that mean?" "It means the following vehicle has been stopped by state police on the pretext of a traffic violation. They'll detain the occupants long enough for us to complete our relocation." The helicopter transported them to a private airstrip near Springfield, where another vehicle was waiting to take them to what Connors described as a more secure facility. The entire operation had the practiced precision of something the Marshal Service had done many times before, which was both reassuring and disturbing. As evening fell, Amanda found herself in a fortified compound that appeared to be a repurposed military installation. Deputy Marshal Connors explained that it was a specialized facility used by the Marshal Service for high-risk witnesses in major federal cases. "You'll be safe here," Connors assured her. "The perimeter is secured by both physical barriers and advanced surveillance systems. Access is strictly controlled, and all personnel are extensively vetted." "For how long?" Amanda asked, the question that had been weighing on her since the sudden evacuation. Connor's expression softened slightly. "I know this is difficult. The disruption, the uncertainty. It's a lot to process, but try to focus on the fact that this is temporary. Once Ridley is apprehended and the immediate threat is neutralized, we can discuss transitioning to a less restrictive security arrangement." That night, lying awake in the Spartan but comfortable bedroom of her new protected accommodation, Amanda reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 2 weeks, from anonymous civil servant to national whistleblower to protected witness, each transition bringing greater restrictions on her freedom and further distance from her former life. She thought about her small apartment in Springfield, now sitting empty. Her sister in Michigan, who had been told only that Amanda was safe but couldn't be contacted directly. Her colleagues at the comptroller's office, some of whom had sent supportive messages after her CNN interview, unaware that one of their own had been at the center of the criminal enterprise she had exposed. Most of all, she thought about Alan Ridley, the man she had worked alongside for years, who now represented the greatest threat to her safety. Where was he? What was he planning? And how much damage could the information he possessed do to those in power if he decided to use it as leverage? The answers to those questions would come sooner than she expected, and in a form that would shock even those who thought they understood the full scope of the corruption she had helped uncover. The next morning dawned with news that sent shockwaves through the federal law enforcement community. Alan Ridley had turned himself in, not to the FBI or local authorities, but to a reporter from the Washington Post. Amanda learned of this development during a briefing with Deputy Marshal Connors and Agent Ramirez, who had flown in specifically to discuss the implications. Ridley approached Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Michael Faraday last night in Washington, D.C., Ramirez explained. He provided Faraday with what appears to be an extensive digital archive documenting corruption within Illinois government dating back more than 15 years. "Why a journalist?" Amanda asked. "Why not cut a deal with prosecutors?" "That's the interesting part," Ramirez replied. "According to our sources at the Post, Ridley claims he doesn't trust federal authorities to pursue the full extent of the corruption because it implicates too many powerful people. He believes going public through the media is the only way to ensure the entire network is exposed." "Is he in custody now?" Connors asked, clearly concerned with the security implications. "Yes, he surrendered to the FBI after his meeting with Faraday, but only after the data had been secured by the Post's legal team." Ramirez shook his head in apparent disbelief. "It's an unprecedented situation. Ridley is essentially using the media as insurance against what he claims would be an attempt to limit the scope of the investigation." "What does this mean for me?" Amanda asked, cutting to her most immediate concern. "If Ridley's in custody, is the threat diminished?" Ramirez and Connors exchanged glances before Ramirez answered. "Potentially, yes, but there's a complication. Ridley has made public statements claiming that certain individuals implicated in his documents might still have motivation to silence those with knowledge of the scheme, including you." "In other words," Amanda concluded, "he's suggesting that even with him in custody, I might still be in danger from others involved in the corruption." "Exactly," Ramirez confirmed. "And while that could be interpreted as an attempt to continue exerting influence, even from custody, we have to take the threat seriously until we can fully analyze the information he's provided." The Washington Post published its first story based on Ridley's documents that afternoon, a detailed exposé that sent tremors through the political establishment. The article revealed that the corruption extended far beyond Illinois, implicating federal officials, judges, and business leaders in a sprawling network of bribery, fraud, and money laundering. Most explosively, the document suggested that the corruption had been known to federal authorities for years, but had been deliberately overlooked due to the high-profile figures involved. Internal FBI memos and Justice Department communications appeared to show that investigations had been redirected or quietly closed when they threatened to expose certain powerful individuals. By evening, the story had dominated every major news outlet. Congressional leaders were calling for special investigations, and the Attorney General had scheduled a press conference for the following morning. Amanda watched the coverage from her secured location, stunned by the scale of what was being revealed. The corruption she had initially uncovered through her audit was just one small component of a vast interconnected system that had operated with impunity for years. "I never imagined it would lead to this," she told Agent Ramirez when he called to update her on the rapidly evolving situation. "I was just following the numbers." "How could something this extensive remain hidden for so long? That's the question everyone's asking," Ramirez replied. "The unfortunate answer appears to be that it remained hidden because people who should have exposed it chose not to. The system protected itself." "Until now," Amanda said softly. "Until you," Ramirez corrected her. "Your audit was the thread that, when pulled, began unraveling the entire tapestry. Ridley might have provided the comprehensive documentation, but none of this would have come to light without your initial discovery and your courage in reporting it." The following days brought a flurry of developments. Emergency congressional hearings were scheduled. The president appointed a special counsel to investigate the allegations, and arrests of high-profile figures began making headlines daily. A week after Ridley's surrender and the publication of the Washington Post exposé, Deputy Marshal Connors informed Amanda that the security assessment had been updated. "The threat level has been downgraded. Connors explained. With Ridley in custody and cooperating with authorities, and with the investigation now being conducted under such intense public scrutiny, the likelihood of anyone taking direct action against you has diminished significantly. Didito, what does that mean practically? Amanda asked, hardly daring to hope. It means we can begin discussing your return to a more normal life, albeit with continued security measures. You won't need to remain in this facility, and you could potentially return to Springfield if you wish, though we would recommend against resuming your position at the comptroller's office immediately. The prospect of regaining some semblance of her former life was both thrilling and terrifying. After weeks of intense security and isolation, the idea of navigating the world as Amanda Foster, now known nationally as the whistleblower who had exposed the largest corruption scandal in recent history, seemed daunting. "I'd like to see my sister," Amanda said, identifying her most immediate priority, "and I need to start thinking about what comes next professionally. I can't imagine returning to my old position as if nothing happened." "Those are reasonable first steps," Connors agreed. "We can arrange for your sister to visit in a secure location, and as for your professional future," she smiled slightly, "let's just say you probably have more options than you realize. I've lost count of the interview requests and speaking invitations that have come through for you." 2 days later, in a monitored but private meeting room at a federal building in Chicago, Amanda reunited with her sister, Lisa. The emotional embrace they shared represented Amanda's first real human connection since the ordeal began. "I've been so worried," Lisa said, finally releasing her from the hug. "The news coverage has been insane, and all I knew was that you were safe but couldn't be contacted. Do you have any idea how terrifying that is for family?" "I'm sorry," Amanda replied sincerely. "Everything happened so quickly, and the security protocols were strict. But I'm okay, really." Lisa studied her sister's face. You look exhausted." "It's been intense," Amanda admitted. "But things are improving. They're talking about transitioning me to a lower security arrangement soon." "Good." Lisa squeezed her hand. "Because I'm not letting you disappear again. Whatever comes next, we face it together." What came next was a carefully managed re-entry into public life. Over the following weeks, with continued but less intrusive security, Amanda was permitted to give select interviews, testify before a congressional committee, and begin considering the numerous opportunities that had emerged from her unexpected fame. Universities offered teaching positions in public administration and ethics. Non-profit organizations focused on government accountability requested her expertise. Publishers approached her about book deals. And perhaps, most surprisingly, several state governments reached out about creating specialized audit divisions specifically designed to detect and prevent the kind of fraud she had uncovered. 3 months after her initial discovery of the discrepancies in the Pandemic Relief Fund, Amanda sat in a Washington, D.C. hotel room, preparing to receive a prestigious award for public service. The president himself would be presenting the honor at a ceremony recognizing individuals who had demonstrated exceptional courage and integrity in government. As she adjusted her dress, far more formal than anything she would have worn in her previous life as an anonymous auditor, Amanda reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. She had never sought fame or recognition. She had simply noticed numbers that didn't add up and followed where they led, driven by a commitment to the principles that had guided her entire career: accuracy, transparency, and accountability. Those principles had cost her the life she had known, subjected her to threats and protective custody, and thrust her into a national spotlight she had never wanted. But they had also exposed a corrupt system that had drained public resources for years, protected powerful criminals, and betrayed the trust of countless citizens. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Ramirez. "Alan Ridley's plea agreement finalized today. His cooperation has already led to 37 additional indictments. None of this would have happened without you. Congratulations on your award tonight. Well deserved. Amanda smiled at the message. Despite the upheaval and danger, despite the loss of anonymity and the comfort of her routine existence, she couldn't bring herself to regret the path she had chosen. Some truths needed to be revealed, no matter the personal cost. Later that evening, as she accepted her award to a standing ovation, Amanda kept her remarks brief and focused on the importance of individual responsibility in maintaining governmental integrity. Systems don't corrupt themselves, she told the audience of distinguished guests and government officials, and they don't reform themselves either. Both corruption and accountability begin with individual choices. The choice to look the other way, or the choice to look more closely, the choice to remain silent, or the choice to speak up. She paused, surveying the room filled with powerful figures from across the political spectrum. I was just an auditor doing my job. But each of us, regardless of position or title, has the power to defend the principles that make government of, by, and for the people possible. The strength of our democracy depends not on grand gestures, but on countless small acts of conscience. May we all find the courage to perform those acts when called upon. As applause filled the room, Amanda felt a sense of closure. The scandal would continue to unfold for years, with trials and investigations and reforms emerging from the wreckage of the corrupt system she had helped expose. Her own future remained uncertain in many ways, filled with new opportunities but also new challenges. But in this moment she was at peace with the choice she had made that October evening, when she first noticed the numbers that didn't add up. Some costs were worth paying, some risks worth taking, when the alternative was allowing corruption to flourish unchecked. In the end, the truth had found its way into the light, not because of powerful institutions or political leaders, but because one person had refused to look away when confronted with wrongdoing. And in that simple act of professional integrity, Amanda Foster had reminded a cynical nation that systems could be held accountable, that corruption could be exposed, and that individuals of conscience could still make a difference. As the ceremony concluded and well-wishers approached to offer congratulations, Amanda noticed a woman approximately her own age waiting patiently at the edge of the crowd. When the woman finally reached her, she spoke quietly, almost confidentially. "You don't know me, Ms. Foster, but I work in the audit division of the Department of Health and Human Services. This week I flagged a pattern of irregularities in a federal grant program that my supervisor told me to ignore." She smiled nervously. "After watching what you did, I've decided to report it up the chain instead. I just wanted to say thank you for showing it can be done." With a quick handshake, the woman disappeared back into the crowd, leaving Amanda with the most meaningful recognition she had received all evening. Her story had inspired another watchdog to bark, another guardian to stand firm. And perhaps that ripple effect, more than any award or accolade, was the true measure of what she had accomplished. The governance of a nation ultimately rested not on its written laws or formal institutions, but on the willingness of individuals to uphold the principles those structures were designed to protect. Amanda Foster, an unlikely hero who had simply followed the numbers to their logical conclusion, had demonstrated the enduring power of that individual commitment to truth and accountability. And in a time of increasing cynicism about government and institutions, that reminder offered something almost as valuable as the corruption she had exposed. Hope that the system could still work as intended when people of conscience did their duty, regardless of the personal cost. If this story taught you something valuable about integrity, the power of individual action, and the importance of accountability in government, please share it with others who might benefit from its message. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join us next week for another true story about the unexpected ways our actions can ripple through lives and institutions. Thank you for watching.